Good evening, Dolphins fans. Welcome to another episode of On the Fin Side with Kat and Paul. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, all of our social media outlets, as well as the Fansided Network and FinFanatic.com. We're entering our final preseason game here against the Bengals on Sunday night. So this Sunday night, we've got, not Sunday night, Sunday at 3 p.m. Central Time. Got the Dolphins versus Bengals in the final preseason game. And then 2 days later, on August 31st, Tuesday, the Dolphins will cut their roster down to 53 players. But before they cut it down to 53, they had to cut it down to 80. And to get there, the Dolphins cut Isaiah Ford, the wide receiver, Jermaine Illuminor, the guard / tackle, as well as placing Lynn Bowden on injured reserve, Paul. And yeah, a little bit of a surprise when you take a look at that. I mean, when it comes to Bowden, promising young player, the Dolphins traded for him last year. And according to the IR rules, he is not going to be available for any time this season. So he's on the shelf long term.
I thought he was so he's not eligible to return?
No, not at all.
Ooh. Well, honestly, given the receiver depth this year, they were going to have to make some tough cuts anyway, so why not put him on a shelf for next year if they need him?
I think that was a strategy too, because you got to think it was because, Bowden had the injury in the Falcons game with the groin, and presumably he was going to miss a couple of weeks already. Mm-hmm. So he would have headed into the season with an injury, and if the Dolphins had decided to cut him and let him go to another team, okay, then you've got you're going to have him on the shelf for a couple of weeks. Now you put him on injured reserve, and then next offseason, Albert Wilson's a free agent. Who knows how long Devontae Parker is going to be around as far as year to year. Preston Williams, kind of that same thing. I mean, there are a lot more seats probably going to be available at wide receiver in 2022 and beyond.
Yeah, and you actually brought up in our chat that they could potentially cut him with some type of injury settlement, and then I think they could bring him back if he decided to re-sign. There's like some weird hokey loophole, but I think if you cut him, he's probably going to look for somewhere that he can get a little more playing time than he's going to here.
And that probably wouldn't be a good play for the Lynn Bowden camp either, because, do you really want to go onto your third team in a little bit over a year with a torn groin and just try to gut it out through the rest of the year? Or do you want to kind of take a step back, pump the brakes, be with a good organization here with a deep wide receiver room, and get in there as a third or fourth receiver next year? So I think that there was something going on as far as an understanding that, hey, we're going to shelve you this year. And I think it's a good move for both sides.
I agree with that. God, you look at what Miami has in that receiver room this year. I know we're going to be talking about our 53-man shortly. And there are some tough cuts in that receiver room. I mean, I'm looking at, looking at this roster and who I think makes it and who's right on the cusp. And I'm looking at our chat and people talking about Kirk Merritt, people talking about Malcolm Perry, people talking about, no one's talking about Preston Williams. We need to see something from him in this game for him to have a shot at this point.
Yeah, and maybe not, because I don't think Preston Williams is going to play. And so it's really probably going to be the Kirk Merritt show. Anybody who's remotely hurt is unlikely to play. But I think it is what it comes down to is, to me, and we'll get to this in a second, but you've got taken Fuller out of the equation for, the 53-man roster. Parker, Waddle, Wilson, Hollins appear to be on the roster. Jakeem Grant, we think, is on the roster too. So that's 5, even taking Fuller out of the equation. And when you consider Bowden and Hearns are on injured reserve, that kind of just leaves Preston Williams against Kirk Merritt heading into this final preseason game.
Well, and Malcolm Perry.
Malcolm Perry too. I think he's got a more of an outside shot, but yeah, he does factor into the mix too.
Because I to be honest with you, and I know we're jumping ahead a little bit here, I almost feel like it's Malcolm Perry versus Kirk Merritt at this point. I there comes a time as a coach that you get a little sick of nagging injuries and guys going on IR year after year after year after year, and not at a point when it's just strategic. Like it's just you start to feel like you can't count on a player being there for you down the stretch. And if your goal is to win a Super Bowl, you need to be able to count on a player being there down the stretch.
So that sounds good in theory. My question is, why wouldn't they have done that already with Preston Williams? Why would they still have him on the team? Wouldn't they have done it already and given the other guys more reps? I asked the same question with Landon Roberts. Why would you have brought him back just to have him, get into the lineup for a week and then cut him again? So that's why, spoiler alert here, I'm going to have them making my 53-man roster.
Oh, geez. Now we're already going to – that's it. I'm keeping 2 fullbacks.
So let's set the baseline here, though, heading into the Bengals game, because it is all about the 53-man roster now. In the Miami Herald today, they talked about that. Tua's not going to play on Sunday. Most of the wide receiver room is not going to play on Sunday. And Brian Flores, let's see this quote here. We're still going through that as a staff. We've got to play the game, so we can't rest everybody. So that just pretty much shows what they're thinking heading into this game. Look, let's not get anybody hurt, and you've got probably 5 or 10 players who this game matters for.
Yeah, no, judging by what we've got here on our roster, it's 10 players that it truly matters for at this point.
It does. And so let's get into an exercise that you and I did here over the last couple of days, is looking at the Dolphins roster now. We've talked about roster locks before, but let's take a look at the projected roster right now as it sits today. The Dolphins are going to carry 53 players. Will Fuller is obviously out of the conversation because he's going to be out week 1. He doesn't count against the Dolphins in week 1. You and I combined have 43 of the 53 players comfortably on the roster right now. It's not to say nothing can't happen, an injury, a trade, whatever can't happen. But 43 out of 53 players we feel really good are going to make the roster. So let's go ahead and go through those. At quarterback, no surprises, Tua and Jacoby Brissett. At running back, Myles Gaskin, Savon Ahmed, and Malcolm Brown. So 3 comfortably there. At wide receiver, with Fuller out of the equation, Devontae Parker, Jalen Waddle, Albert Wilson, Jakeem Grant, and Mac Hollins. So that's 5. Tight end, Mike Gesicki, Hunter Long, and a lot of competition at the bottom there, but we've got 2 comfortably making it there. The offensive line, we've got 8. Austin Jackson, Liam Eichenberg, Michael Dieter, Robert Hunt, Jesse Davis as the starters. Then as the backups, Solomon Kindley, Greg Little, and 7th-round pick Larnell Coleman, who's been impressive lately. Hard to see him getting cut. So on the defensive side of the ball, on the edge spot, we've got Emmanuel Ogbah, Jalen Phillips. At defensive tackle, Raekwon Davis, Christian Wilkins, Zach Sealer, Adam Butler. At the off-ball linebacker spot, Bernardrick McKinney, Jerome Baker, Andrew Van Ginkel, Sam Egwavon. And at defensive backers, let's start at cornerback, Xavier Howard, Byron Jones, Nick Needham, Justin Coleman, Noah Igbenogany, and Jamal Perry. 6 cornerbacks comfortably on the roster right now, according to us. Safety, Javon Holland, Eric Rowe, Jason McCourty, and Brandon Jones. So 4 safeties. And then, of course, Jason Sanders, Pilardi, and Blake Ferguson. I'm running out of gas here now as we get down. So that is 43 players we have on the 53-man roster, Paul.
Yeah, no, that's a lot of names. Jesus, I'm impressed you got through all that. It's there's some interesting battles left. I know we're going to be talking about the receiver room. I know we're going to be talking about the running back room with 3 there, the tight end room. Whoever our final offensive lineman is, newsflash, it's probably a center for each of us. Then a couple of little spots left on defense, but it's amazing how many tough cuts it looks like Miami has left at the moment.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of them. And I can't believe that I'm looking at this roster and I'm seeing a couple of names that I do think are going to be cut. So let's take a look at who we have filling those final 10 spots there. So, no surprises, Tua and Brissett at quarterback. We both got those. Running back, I've got just those 3 making the roster. Myles Gaskin, Savon Ahmed, and Malcolm Brown. I mean, Savon Ahmed more active in the passing game here this year, so maybe they don't have to keep Patrick Laird as much as they probably would have otherwise would have had to. So I'm going to stick with 3 at running back. Did you go with 4 or did you go with 3?
I kept Laird.
Okay. Yeah, that's
his rapport with Tua is huge. It's absolutely huge. So that being the case, I kept him on the roster here. As much as I wanted to see Jared Dokes make the roster, I just couldn't do it.
The odds are that the Dolphins are going to keep a 4th running back. Dokes or Laird. I left Laird was one of my final cuts off the roster here, but Laird also played a lot of special teams over the last couple of years too. So he does have a really good chance to make the roster in that way too. Wide receiver, to me, it boils down to Preston Williams versus Kirk Merritt with Malcolm Perry having an outside shot. How about you?
For me, it really boils down to Perry versus Merritt. I think they'll be able to make a case to use some type of injury designation on Williams, even though they brought him back, given the fact that he hasn't been able to play yet and things like that. Or they may shop him around and hope somebody bites with a conditional draft pick. But as far as Perry goes, the fact that he is so position flexible, we know Brian Flores puts a huge, huge value on positional flexibility.
He sure does. And, you've said several times as well that maybe they look at Malcolm Perry not as much as a receiver, but as, kind of that 4th running back who can be moved around a lot. And, he also obviously came out of Navy as a quarterback. So that versatility, maybe he does end up staying on the roster, even though he hasn't flashed as much as some of the other receivers.
You know what? You quoted me well enough. I'm going to make a change. I'm going to keep Malcolm Perry at running back, and I'm going to keep Kirk Merritt at wide receiver. And
all right, so Laird's gone. Okay.
Yep.
Okay, makes sense. Yeah, and I think makes a lot of sense. Tight end. You still have Durham Smythe, and I've got Adam Shaheen, I would imagine, right?
Yep.
Yeah, I've got Shaheen. I've also got Ethan Carter making the roster. The Dolphins keeping 4 tight ends. I still think Durham Smythe is going to be traded for, probably a 7th round pick. You'd be crazy not to offer the Dolphins a draft pick for a Durham Smythe or Preston Williams at this point, with the talent that they bring. If it's going to only cost you a 6th or a 7th round pick, probably a 7th round pick. But if you cut Smythe, you save over $2 million. And the Dolphins have, just over the last year, given a lot of guaranteed money. Well, not a lot, but they've given guaranteed money to Ethan Carter and to Adam Shaheen. And I think that means something. And I think that's going to be the biggest difference in this. That's why Smythe, as much as solid as he's been, I think he gets the axe.
Yeah, and I actually have Carter on my roster as well. So I like that call. Keeping a fullback, Cat. Keeping a fullback. I love it.
Not a fullback. Not a fullback at all. I mean, I do have a fullback on my roster. His name is Landon Roberts, who doubles as a linebacker. See, that's where I see the value. And if we're talking about such a log jam linebacker spot, which we'll get to, and everything is really up in the air, I'm going to give the edge to somebody who can play fullback because, hey, look, it's a useless position. You don't really love yourself if you play fullback, and it's.
I've heard a lot of fullbacks that love themselves. So
for the lot that don't, a lot that are struggling right now because they can't be a running back or can't be a receiver or tight end. It's I feel bad for them. So anyway, sorry to all the fullbacks out there.
no, and I feel you on that. I mean, it's I'd go a different direction as far as fullbacks that are already on the roster and say Christian Wilkins. It's
Sure.
Love having him in that backfield.
Sure.
But we all know how many years have you had to listen to me talk about putting one of those fat guys in the backfield or two?
Yeah, and I've got to give a shout out to a guy in our comments a lot. His name's Wayne, and he makes a lot of good points. He goes back to the 70s and the 80s, and my thing is that's the point. You're going back to the 70s and the 80s. The fullback has been replaced by wide receivers.
The better fullback.
Just kidding. I love you, Wayne. Offensive line. So we've got the 8 locks: Austin Jackson, Liam Eichenberg, Michael Dieter, Robert Hunt, Jesse Davis, Greg Little, Solomon Kindley, and Larnell Coleman as our 8 that are going to be on the roster. At least it'd be shocking if one got cut.
Can I make a prediction? You kept Skippy Skura. Am I right?
I did. I'm not saying I would, but I mean,
I did as well. As much as I don't want to.
Oh, Cam Tom gets the old heave ho, huh?
I'm hoping he doesn't, but Cam Tom gets shown the door unless he can play some fullback for us, which I doubt. Oh, I love it.
I would have been in favor of having Matt Skura be, very likely on the team as the 44th likely, I guess we can say. But the other day, Skippy Skura returned, according to Barry Jackson, skipped some footballs across the pavement there, and Cameron Tom replaced him at one point as the second center. So that competition's not over, and that's going to be a big one here in the Bengals-Dolphins game. Matt Skura against Cameron Tom. So we've both got Skura, but, never know. If Cameron Tom may be a good game away from being that, 9th or 10th offensive lineman. And that brings me to my other point, Paul, is that, this is a game that I do want to see against the Bengals. Look, the starters are going to be out. I mean, this is the most useless preseason game, but it does mean something for players in the bottom of the roster. I want to see from quarter 1 to quarter 4, Greg Little, Matt Skura, Cameron Tom, Robert Jones, and Larnell Coleman playing basically every snap here. Because if in that, when you go up against NFL caliber talent, if those 5 guys do for those 4 quarters, I think you're going to see a lot that you need to see out of them in a game situation.
They're not going to be going up against starters themselves.
They say starters, NFL caliber kind of talent.
Well, we're putting out some NFL not really NFL caliber kind of talent as well in a few of the positions there. But I can't bring myself to say I want to see Skippy out there. I just can't. I want to see Cam Tom out there killing it. And you know what? If the only way I want to see Skippy out there is if we think that handling that many snaps, he's going to do his best impression of Pouncey and Roethlisberger in the playoffs last year.
I mean, I want to see those 5 guys on the field and someone doing a good job, because if, we've talked about Larnell Coleman, that, he's an impressive athlete. He's looked the part a lot more than we thought. If he goes out there and he plays a really good game, I think that says something about him. But if he goes out there and gets his butt kicked, maybe I start rethinking this about him being very likely to be on the roster. So offensive line is big in this game.
I've seen enough from Coleman that I want to see more, and I want to see how he develops at this point. So for me, I would be comfortable with them saying, you know what, we've seen enough of Coleman. We want to develop him. We'll play him for a quarter, and we're good. And see them put Robert Jones out there. See them put guys like Pankey out there. I want to see a lot of Durval Kiraz-Nito in this game and see what he can do, because I'm sick and tired of hearing about him. I want to see it.
And when I saw him, when I rewatched the Falcons game, I was impressed by him. I mean, for such a short body of work, for being on the team for 6 years or whatever. No, I think he's been on the team for 2 years on the international exemption. But I, I hope at least he gets back on the practice squad. I mean, I would certainly be in favor of that. So we'll see. On the defensive side of the ball, we talked about the edge players. Obviously, Agba, Jalen Phillips make it. Van Ginkel, if you count him as an edge guy. Um, we go back and forth. We've both put him on, put him off. Jason Strobridge, this is a big game for him. He had a couple of really good reps against the Falcons, one of which was that safety by Sam Eguavoen on Felipe Franks in the Falcons game, where he pushed the edge really, really well. And that's the kind of player he's got to be. So is he going to be on your final 53-man roster?
I kept him.
I did too. Barely. I mean, one of the final guys on my roster. And at defensive tackle, I kept, obviously, Raekwon Davis, Christian Wilkins, Zach Sealer, Adam Butler. And I did keep John Jenkins too. I mean, given that look when the Dolphins are struggling in run defense, if they are this year, of John Jenkins at nose tackle and Raekwon Davis at defensive end, I think that could be a good look. And I think that's what the Dolphins were kind of aiming for when they brought John Jenkins back after a really good 2019 season and that lost season for the Dolphins. Did you have John Jenkins making it?
I did not. I did keep Butler, though.
That's a tough call with Jenkins.
It is. I like Jenkins a lot. But my thing here is what Sealer, Davis, and Wilkins were down the stretch last year was the start of something potentially special, and I just don't see a lot of reps that you're going to get him on the field for other than goal line, and you've got some of these edge guys that I think could eat those reps, and that's where it gets very tough for me because I'd rather have Raekwon Davis and Sealer on the field than Jenkins and Raekwon Davis.
Yeah, you know what? For another reason, I'm going to take Strobridge off my 53 here. This is a fluid because you're right. Is that when you look at kind of those down defensive linemen, Davis, Wilkins, Sealer, Butler, and then Agba and Jalen Phillips are not down defensive linemen. But Agba pretty much is. He's got his hand in the dirt a lot. Phillips will too. He can, and Phillips can too, and Agba will more. Yeah, maybe there's not room for a seventh lineman there. So Strobridge, you're gone. Sorry.
See, for me, the fact that Strobridge can get a little more upfield push than I think Jenkins can, that's where Jenkins can hold the line a little better, but Strobridge can actually get upfield, and you do need to get some penetration from that spot in a Brian Flores defense, and that's where I think Strobridge gets the edge.
Yeah, my question is, can Butler move out there at defensive end and set an edge? And we know that when you give that front of, Raekwon Davis, Christian Wilkins, and Zach Sealer as that 3-man down line, they set good edges too when you've got Sealer and you've got Christian Wilkins there on the edge too. So yeah, I mean, it's front seven gets hairy. It really does. And then off-ball linebacker, if we have Van Ginkel as an edge guy, he's the one guy that's really fluid. We've both got Jerome Baker, Bernardrick McKinney, obviously, and then it is a mad dash for those final 2 or 3 linebacker spots. We have Eguavoen comfortably making the team now, and when you think about it, last couple of years, one of the players who has the most special teams reps, obviously had the amazing game against the Falcons in the Dolphins dress rehearsal, has been with the team for several years. We've got them both comfortably making the roster. And then it gets hairy between Jordan Scarlett, Landon Roberts, Calvin Munson, Shaq Griffin, and Duke Riley. Out of those 5 guys, who do you have making the roster there?
I have 2 making the roster. I've got Griffin and I've got Roberts. Griffin because I think he's shown a little bit of ability to also go out and play that Van Ginkel role. and Roberts because he's a switchblade player. I don't love the idea of keeping Roberts. I hope he doesn't see a snap all year. I don't like his guesswork, even though sometimes he hits, and when he hits, it's big, but when he doesn't, it's horrific. But again, I think he is a little bit of a Flores guy as well.
I agree. I also have Roberts. So, like I said before, making the 53, because it being the other day in practice, he was getting first string reps, not ahead of Bernard McKinney, but in relief of him. And I don't think he'd be in that spot right now, so close to the season, if the Dolphins weren't serious about keeping him on the roster. So he makes it for me too. Calvin Munson stays on the 53-man roster ahead of Duke Riley, Vince Spiegel, and Shaq Griffin. And the reason, very simply, is he's moved around a lot at outside linebacker and inside linebacker, and he's one of Brian Flores' favorite special teams guys. So he, for me, also makes the 53-man roster. Defensive back, we've got the locks of Howard, Holland, Rowe, Byron Jones, Nick Needham as the fifth defensive back. Jason McCourty is sixth. Brandon Jones is seventh. Justin Coleman is eighth. Noah Igbenogany is ninth. Jamal Perry as 10th because of the impressive training camp, as well as his special teams work last year and his versatility at safety and cornerback, outside cornerback, as well as nickelback. I've got Javaris Davis as my 11th guy making the 53-man roster.
I love Javaris Davis. He was that close to being my my freaking final position, but I'm going to go with Trill Williams on this one. It's a positional flexibility for me as far as Trill Williams goes.
That will be an interesting competition in the Bengals game because Trill Williams has very raw physical skills. He's the perfect guy to keep as the 53rd guy. Javaris Davis continues to impress, and regardless of which one makes it, maybe both make it. Maybe neither one make it. I hope you see one or both of these guys on the practice squad if that's the case. Then finally, Pilardi, Sanders, Ferguson. Take a heart attack for anything like that not to happen. So,
dude, I have to say this, Kat. Every time, because of the tone of your voice, every time you say Ferguson, all I can picture is Norm Macdonald as Burt Reynolds on Jeopardy, referring to himself as Turd Ferguson. And it makes me laugh every single time. So if you say Ferguson and you see me laugh, it's literally me picturing Norm Macdonald with the big stupid hat on Saturday Night Live doing his Turd Ferguson thing as Burt Reynolds.
I love that. I love that skit. I also think I have a beautiful sounding voice, so I'm conflicted now. Oh man, I tell you what, I've been fighting all day too, and
don't say that right now.
It's been a long week, and I don't know if I have much else left. I mean, we've been through quite a journey here since the Dolphins' last game against the Bills. Gone through the draft, 4 months of the draft, post-draft, trudging through the summer, 53-man roster predictions. I think this is our 5th one now. 3 preseason games. Man, I'm ready for the season to get here now.
Dude, we are almost there, and I can't wait. I will be at the first season game. I'm going to coach 2 games that morning and hop in the car and haul my butt up to Foxborough. It'll be the wife and kids' first Dolphins game in person. And, God, it would be so nice to start this new season with an utter smackdown of Mac and Cam and everybody else up on that Patriots roster. I cannot wait.
So who do you think's going to start for the Patriots week 1? Mac Jones or Cam Newton?
I think Cam's going to start, but I think Mac will come on in relief, especially if Miami's able to create some turnovers early.
Yeah, I'm starting to think it's going to be more Mac Jones. And, I kind of like that if that's the case. I think Cam Newton has a better chance to beat the Dolphins in week 1, but Mac Jones is obviously throughout the next couple of years probably going to be the better quarterback. So, yeah, I'm either way, I'm I have a good feeling about week 1 for the Dolphins, and I'm not the most overly optimistic person by nature, but I feel good about week 1 for the Dolphins. I think they're going to look at the first 2 games at New England against the Bills at home and think, we got to do this right this time, because the Dolphins started out 0-2 last year, and even though they finished an amazing 10-6 given the circumstances, they saw those first 2 games as games that hurt them and ultimately didn't land them in the playoffs.
Yeah, no, I agree. And God, I was just thinking about it with a couple of people talking in the chat. The other thing I wanted to make sure we mentioned too, and I know we said we do this almost every episode until it was time, but Dolphins NYC, their MetLife takeover, that's going to be such a blast this year. Make sure you guys go check out DolphinsNYC.com. Get in on it. They have a catered tailgate you can get in on. You can take a bus out of New York City. So if you're not from up in the Northeast, you can go to New York City for the weekend. Take the bus right out of Midtown and head down to the stadium with a bunch of us. I think there's usually 2,000 of us at the game together. Every year the Dolphins do their show from the tailgate. Joe Rose hangs out. Garfinkel hangs out. One year it was Duper and Clayton. Nat Moore always comes and hangs out. Sam Madison went to it with us one time. I mean, it is a ton of fun. And, it raises money for charity as well, which is great.
They do fantastic work. Absolutely. A few comments in chat, let's see. Scummy said Steve DeBerg's going to be our 3rd quarterback.
I love Scummy's comments.
I think he's 70 now. Let's see. Trill, Williams, or Kirk Merritt, Finn's Doc says. Ooh, that's a good one here.
I kept both.
It may, Paul kept both, and I kept neither. So we'll see about that. And again, Trill Williams, Kirk Merritt, Robert Jones at guard. These are players you got to look out for in the Bengals game. If you're looking for a cohesive starting Dolphins offensive line for week 1, don't watch the Bengals-Dolphins game. I'll warn you that right now. Scummy also said, does Micah Parsons make our final 53-man roster? That's just low. That is that. Oof. Trying to cut wounds there. Oh man. Could have traded up for him, but
we could have. We absolutely could have. I'm gonna go cry myself to sleep tonight.
Let's see here. Hey Bill, hey Ron, what's going on? The roster update. You know where to find it, Ron. You can find it on YouTube. You can find it on wherever we are, iTunes, and we're going to be sure to be back here as well on Sunday night, recapping the Bengals game and really kind of put the finishing touches on the Dolphins 53-man roster. Paul, before we say goodnight here, anything else you want to add?
Michael Bustamante. Paul is mad cool. That's my favorite comment in the chats tonight, just so you know. I think that you hit that nail on the head, Michael, and I appreciate it.
What about me? I mean,
he didn't mention you.
Whatever.
Don't be all green with jealousy, Kat. Nah, we know, Kat. You know I love you anyway. So
you're okay.
Thanks.
That's gonna do it here.
I'm like a fullback to you, right?
No, see, you're like a center.
In my Heartline jersey.
Yeah, that's I was thinking about wearing my Jonathan Martin jersey just to prove to people that I actually had one. Hey, even though I tend to be serious, I can laugh at myself. I paid $300 for a Jonathan Martin jersey. Wrote an article about buying the Jonathan Martin jersey, and then the whole Bullygate scandal happened.
I'm willing to bet if you wear the Jonathan Martin jersey for one of our shows, he will show up in the news within a week or something.
That is for sure, and that's going to do it for our preview of the Bengals game and our analysis here of the ever-evolving Dolphins 53-man roster. I'm Brian Cat NFL. Paul is fanatic_pick on Twitter. You can also follow us on Facebook, Twitter, all of our social media outlets, iTunes, the finfanatic.com website, and the Fansided Network. And if it's not on the right side and it's not on the left side, it is on the Fin side. Have a good night, everyone.